Mounted as a state corporation, the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, KETRACO, is not only tasked with managing the country's electricity grid, but also the regional power interconnectors. So today we would like to understand how much has KETRACO achieved so far, and who else to talk about that other than the parastatal's Managing Director, Fernandes Barasa. Welcome on board, MD.
Thank you.
Just in a nutshell, what is the mandate of your parastatal, the KETRACO?
KETRACO's mandate is to plan, design, construct, operate and maintain high voltage transmission lines. Where high voltage, we talking about a minimum of 132 kilovolts up to 500 kilovolts. We are also concerned about ensuring that we have regional interconnectors in Africa.
What strategies have you put in place to ensure that you achieve that mandate, and how much of that mandate has been fulfilled so far? Now,
one of the strategic initiatives that we are doing, of course, is to expand the national grids by constructing high voltage transmission lines. And maybe just for purposes of clarification, we have 4 classifications of our transmission lines. The first category is lines which are meant to facilitate rural access of electricity to areas which have not been served by the national grid. Those are mainly 132 kVs. The second category are 220 kVs up to 400. And those are lines which are meant to stabilize and strengthen the transmission network, because stability of power is a critical objective of KETRACO, and reliability of power. The third category of the lines we are constructing are lines basically meant to evacuate power from generation to distribution. A good example is Loyangalani Suswa that we commissioned 2 years ago. That is evacuating wind power from Marsabit up to Suswa, that is Loyangalani. And then the fourth category are the regional interconnectors. So far we are doing 3 of them are under construction. So you can clearly see that we have those 4 categories. And our strategic initiatives are meant to be addressed by those lines. And then we also have substations that we're doing, high voltage substations, 132 and 220 kV. So all those are the strategic initiatives we are fast tracking in our strategic plan to ensure that we facilitate that rural access, strengthen the national grid, and also evacuate power to the load centers.
It's been approximately 5 years since you came into office. Which would you single out as major milestones that KETRACO has made under your leadership?
I think for the last 5 years, we've managed to bring on board 2,400 kilometers of high voltage transmission lines, and also over 60 high voltage substations. I will just mention quite a number of the lines were brought on board. I talked about Mombasa, Nairobi, the 400 kV, first 400 kV line had to be energized in Eastern Central Africa. That was done in 2017. The line is 42 kilometers. The other line we energized along Mombasa, Nairobi is Suswa-Isinya, 100 kilometers. That again was energized in 2017, August. And by energizing Suswa-Isinya, we have also stabilized power within Nairobi through Athi River in Bakassi. And of course, lastly is Loyangalani Suswa line. This line is a 400 kV, 435 kilometers, traversing around over 6 counties, starting from Marsabit. We have Samburu, we have Laikipia, we have Nyandarua, we have Nakuru, we have Narok and Kajiado, 7 counties. So it's quite historical because this line has put KETRACO on the map, global map, by evacuating power, that is wind, from the largest wind generation plant in Africa at 310 megawatts of power. So for us, it's quite a milestone, and we are very happy to celebrate the milestone. By the way, we are celebrating our 12th birthday. because KETRACO was formed on the 2nd of December 2008. So just 12 years old. And
this is one final question that came into my mind when you were describing. What is the magic that happens at Suswa? Understandably, every line rather in the country must either exit from or enter into Suswa. How complex, how big is the project then?
Well, Suswa is, I can say, our hub, because so far we have almost 5 transmission lines that are terminating there. Of course, the first 2 lines, in fact, they're almost fixed. We have Olkaria 1, Olkaria Suswa, 1, 2, 3, that are basically facilitating evacuation of geothermal power from Olkaria to Suswa. The second category is Suswa Isinya, where we did commissioning of the first 400 kV, 100 kilometers from Suswa to Isinya. We have Loyangalani Suswa, of course, the winds starting from Loyangalani and terminating in Suswa. And then, of course, the regional interconnector, that is Ethiopia, Kenya, again terminating at Suswa. So Suswa is one of our biggest substations we have. And that's why when you look at electricity, you cannot just terminate it anywhere. You have to terminate it in a big substation. And that's why our mandate is to have around 4 or 5 type of Suswa substations. In fact, the big thing is going to be, again in Isinya, we have around 3 lines terminating there, including the reinforcement component for Ethiopia, Kenya. We intend to have a 400 kV substation at Kimuka, funded by World Bank, a 400 kV substation in Gilgil, funded by World Bank, and a 400 kV substation in Lesos, funded by World Bank. Already we are having a 400 kV substation in Mariakani. So when you look at the power flow, the more power you generate, you need to have a bigger substation to absorb that power, because that is how the power flow goes, so that we don't have challenges on power stability and the power flow. Because the more you bring generation on board, you also have to upgrade your national grid by constructing those high voltage substations. And so far, for us, Suswa is one of the high voltage. But of course, we have programs of now upgrading from 220 to 400. Yeah.
5 Suswas in the near future. Mega plan, all that in a span of how many years, perhaps?
Actually, Suswa, for the last 6 years, I can tell you, is we have so many developments. And Suswa is unique because this is one single location that you could get over 200 acres of land. So it also gives that geographical advantage of Suswa as a site, which of course gives us an opportunity for expansion. We don't have any single site around here away from Nairobi that will give you over 200 acres of land. So Suswa became the natural choice for all the lines terminating there.
Absolutely, yes. Achieving over 2,400 kilometers of land and definitely of electricity transmission is not a mean achievement, and definitely it comes with its expenses. And I'd like to bring on board the compensation topic. How do you handle situations where the rate of compensation is too high? Because I understand there are some properties, especially which you decide to utilize, that could attract very high compensation costs.
Now, one of the approaches that we have used to address compensation, of course, is using the National Land Commission. Matters valuation by the Constitution and the Lands Act are domiciled in NLC. So where KETRACO comes in is to partner with the National Land Commission so that any figures that we use for purposes of compensation are figures that have been valued by NLC. This brings on board consistency so that we avoid ad hoc valuations. Before we brought NLC on board, of course, we used to have those challenges where we use our own valuers. But I want to appreciate the support we have gotten from the Ministry of Energy and also the Ministry of Lands. Brings independence and credibility of the figures. Yeah, so by using NLC, we have managed to address most of the issues around compensation. Of course, applying now our compensation policy of a minimum of 30% for land, dependent on the limited loss of use where the corridor is traversing. By the way, the corridor depends on the voltages of the line. A 132 kV transmission line requires a 30-meter corridor, 15-15 from the center line. 220 kV requires 45 meters. And then 400 kV requires a corridor of 60 meters. That is 30 meters from the center line. So that's now the corridor that we compensate.
Still on compensation, money definitely can elicit trouble. Definitely, it's for the longest time ever. In cases where you've decided to occupy ancestral or communal land, sometimes trouble could erupt between families or between communities. How do you ensure that this compensation is seamless and that there are no court battles, there's no infighting?
Now, when it comes to communal land, and this is something that we have addressed, especially in Marsabit, what we have been doing is, first of all, to get the opinion shapers and committees in those particular regions. And most often than not, the compensation for communal land, we do projects for them in lieu of compensation because the land is not owned by an individual. So what those communities will prefer is we build schools for them, we do hospitals, we do boreholes, especially the pastoralists, and that has been taken very well in lieu of compensation. Now, with regard to the succession issues, of course, those are now some of the things that we involve the administration. And most often than not, of course, we go up to getting the court decisions just to make sure that we're compensating the right people. But by and large, as we address all those issues, it does not affect construction. That is the bottom line. That we try to separate compensation from construction matters for purposes of expediting the construction. In the past, we used to have challenges where people insist that you must give them money before you get access. But because the compensation process is threefold, we start by compensating for the structures, where we pay 70%. And then the owner of the structure demolishes the structure, and we now follow up with 30%. The next set of compensation is for any crops and any trees that we damage on the corridor in the course of construction. And then, of course, finally, the most emotive one is land compensation. So all those structured compensations, we do them in phases so that we allow the contractor to get access on site.
Has there been instances that you will say love that perhaps they were somewhat problematic, and how did you come around and solve them?
Well, I just want to highlight maybe one or two. We had some delays in project completion for Mombasa Nairobi, where the project was actually commissioned, or rather started in 2010, and the completion came 7 years later, largely because of compensation challenges around Kajiado County. But I want to appreciate the intervention from the National Land Commission, the Minister of Energy, and the entire government to address those compensation issues by, of course, having government involvement in the project. It gave us a bit of support Another challenge we had on compensation was Loengalani Suswa, where communities had constructed manyatas along the line, so it became difficult to remove those people. So again, we had to bring on board government security machinery, where, of course, we had to deploy police, and that was done. So that was basically what we did to address compensation challenges and also structures which interfere with the construction process. And yet the bottom line is about compensation. So by bringing on board government machinery, because this is a national priority project, we were able to address those issues. And even right now, that's what we are doing. And I want to appreciate the support you are getting from Presidential Delivery Unit, that is PDU, the county commissioners, regional commissioners, they're also involved in just making sure that they fast track any issues to do with compensation by sensitizing the community so that they can allow those infrastructure projects to go on as we deal with compensation matters. Yeah.
Besides the compensation dilemmas, what are the challenges, even as KETRACO marks 12 years of operation in the country, have you been facing and how are you dealing with them?
Another challenge that is quite prevalent is vandalism. And this occurs both on lines which have been energized. Like we had some vandalism happening around Embakasi for the underground cable, a 220 kV cable being vandalized. We've seen some vandalism happening on Ethiopia, Kenya, especially where the works have been completed. But then the line is divided into 3 lots, where the first 2 lots have been completed. But of course, you cannot energize before everything is done. So when we have all the towers up, the stringing has been done, there's no power flowing through the transmission line, then it's prone to vandalism. So we've seen those kind of cases, and it makes it very expensive for us because we definitely have to do replacement. And the strategies we have been using so far is just to sensitize the community, especially the landowners within, so that they become part and parcel of our gatekeepers. Of course, with regard to the Energy Act, we pushed in some amendments to make vandalism an economic crime. And so far, they have tried to make it stiff so that whoever is caught vandalizing an infrastructure project, the fines have really been enhanced to 5 million shillings and or 10 years imprisonment or both. So all that, I believe, are deterrent measures just to address rampant vandalism. Yeah.
On to my final question, Andy, I'd like us to run through the timelines of the projects that you have. When do you intend to finish them, and what should definitely Kenyans expect from KETRACO?
Now, when you look at the timelines, we are guided by the transmission master plan. We have a 20-year transmission master plan, which we are implementing right now. That is from 2018 up to 2038. And basically that transmission master plan, together with the least cost power development plan, is what is guiding our mandate. In the next 3 to 4 years, we are going to bring on board around 5,000 kilometers of transmission lines by 2025. By 2030, up to 2038, we'll be having around 15,000 kilometers of transmission line. And this one, you already have feasibility studies which have been done in areas that require issues around enhancing stability of power and reliability. We have feasibility studies which have been done on projects that are supposed to strengthen the national grid. We have 400 kV substations where World Bank has already expressed interest. So what I'm seeing in the next 20 or so years is KETRACO will now be focusing on O&M, because once you have brought on board our transmission lines, now the next big thing will be operational maintenance. And the other big investment is the National Control Center. By bringing on board our regional interconnection, of course, we are now coming up with the National Control Center, which will facilitate regional power trade and power exchange in the neighborhood. That is Ethiopia, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, etc. So all those are the programs that we have in place. And I can see that the future is bright for KETRACO because this is the company that will make the country achieve the Vision 2030. We cannot be an industrialized nation without a strong national grid. And that is what KETRACO is bringing on board. Yeah.
Just one final question. You spoke of definitely the regional power integration between various countries. What is the progress? Kenya, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia?
Yeah. Now, so far we have 3 regional interconnectors. The one that is more advanced is the Ethiopia-Kenya, the so-called Eastern Electricity Highway Project. Now, this project is costing around 75 billion Kenya shillings. And so far, we are doing 98%. We are already done with the converter station. It will be commissioned for a period of 3 months, from January up to April. The transmission line Lot 2 is done. Marsabit up to Samburu, up to Nyandarua is done. We only have a few remaining sections in Narok, where we have the ground electrode that is meant to stabilize power, that we are having a bit of stringing works. And by end of the year, we'll be done with most of the stringing works. And then the contractor for the converter station is Siemens Germany, is fast-tracking most of the installation works and already doing a cold commissioning. So we expect full installations and construction to be done by end of this month and January. And then we move now to hot commissioning that will take a period of, let's say, 3 months. So we are hopeful that by April next year, we'll be ready to commission the first regional interconnector in Africa that has capacity of evacuating 2,000 megawatts of power. So again, we'll be scoring a first on this one.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the valuable insights.
Yes, thank you.
That you no longer shake hands.
Yes, absolutely. Sasa, asante.